Well, first of all, thanks a lot for that very nice introduction. I'm not sure I deserve it, but it's great. As you know, I am Andrew Thompson. I'm here actually representing our family. You can tell I've got a foreign accent, I think. By birth, I'm English, but I've lived in California for many years with my wife, Sylvia, and our 5 children. Sylvia was born in the United States. She had a Swiss father and an Estonian mother. And it turns out we have more living relatives now in this country, Estonia, than any other country in the world. We've been investing in the cause of freedom for nearly 30 years. So, is that going to work? Okay, how do you press the button to make it work? It's a good question. I'm pressing it. Can somebody forward the slide? Oh, there we go. All right, thank you. So this is Sylvia's Estonian mother, Olga Kistler-Ritso. She was born in Kiev in 1920 to an Estonian family. Had a really tumultuous early life, punctuated by the Russian Civil War, the death of her mother, and then when she was 2, the deportation of her father to Siberia by the Russians. She ended up back in Estonia and was raised by a foster family in Tallinn, became a doctor. Obviously, during the Second World War, she witnessed the Russians invading Estonia, then Germany, and then the Russians coming back. So she fled west in 1944 as part of what I think you all know in this country as the Great Flight. And what Olga would have said is that she loved her country, but she loved freedom more. She spent 5 years in a DP camp in Germany, much of that time as the DP camp doctor, and she got to America in 1949, sponsored by a Methodist church in New York. She requalified as a doctor, got married when she was 39, and had a baby when she was 40 years old in 1962. And that's my wife, Sylvia. She never forgot her homeland. She never forgot her family, her friends, and most especially, she never forgot her Estonian culture. So, in 1992, when Estonia again became a free country, she wanted to help rebuild her homeland. And she began talking with the leaders here of this newly free nation. And that led to a request to create a memory institution. And the goal was that never again would Estonia be occupied by a foreign power. So Olga formed the Kistler-Ritso Foundation. And that foundation has a mission to promote freedom, most especially in Estonia. And by extension, to evangelize the ideas and values that underpin individual liberty. So, KRF made gifts that have funded the creation of what's known as the Museum of Occupations, or now more recently as Vabamu. And this is the largest non-profit in Estonia. It operates in partnership with the Estonian government and the Estonian people, and they contribute through donations and admission fees. And what Vabamu does is to promote freedom by memorializing the occupation and the people who lost their lives and their livelihoods in that period. It honors the people who fought in the resistance. And most especially and more recently, what we do is to celebrate the incredible recovery of Estonia in this new era of freedom. So, as part of the plan to help her homeland, Olga wanted to make a connection back to the country where she'd lived for so many years, and that's America. And in 2005, KRF endowed a Baltic Studies program at Stanford University Libraries. And Stanford recruited an incredibly talented Estonian academic, Liisi Ese, who's done a great job and built a significant collection of materials documenting Estonia's recent history at Stanford. And the goal here, of course, is to make Estonia highly visible at a major US university, and in addition, to create a structural link between Estonia and Silicon Valley's tech economy. Now, you may ask, why Stanford Libraries? And that's probably a good question. Aren't libraries dusty old places full of cobwebs? Well, no. Stanford Libraries is known actually as the juggernaut of digital innovation in academia. It's an incredible digital platform, and we thought that was a perfect complement to what was becoming the most digital country in the world. So, that has led to a flourishing program. Liisi Ese, incredibly good leader, but in addition, the Stanford librarian who's here, Mike Keller, has become an enthusiastic Estonia-phile. He's a formidable force of nature, a Stanford vice provost, and a very powerful figure within Stanford's leadership. And so Vabamu and Stanford have formed partnerships across the Estonian government There are cultural exchange programs, including many talks and presentations at Stanford about Estonia and its leadership in digital society, over 30 in 2024 alone. There are Estonian academics now coming to Stanford on fellowships. There'll be, I think, 13 or 14 in this coming year, and they're at Stanford to learn about how you not only create publications out of your research, but how you create public companies, which is probably more valuable. There'll be nearly 40 Stanford students coming to Estonia this summer on internships. And so all of these activities create a growing, vibrant, Estonian-focused campus community at Stanford. And all of that is making Estonia visible and valued. In 2022, we decided to formally shift Vabamu's identity and create 3 new pillars of activity. The first is museums and exhibits, which is the traditional activity of the organization, but then youth engagement and global conversations. The idea here is that Vabamu cannot be static or passive. To be effective in this mission of never again, you need to stay relevant and in particular keep educating and engaging new generations, especially young people who did not experience the occupation. So on the museum side, there's the main house, but there's also exhibits inside what were the KGB cells in Tallinn, and I can tell you that's a very powerful exhibit. There were over 70,000 visitors who came to these exhibits in 2023, and over 90% of those people are from foreign countries, international visitors. Norte Vabamu, Nova, it's explicitly designed to engage young people in this country. Over 10,000 participated in 2024, and the goal here is to bring those people into conversations that will encourage them to be civically engaged and to know and understand what freedom is about. Lastly, global conversations, and this highlights Estonia's leadership in digital society. And so there are conferences and presentations in Estonia, they're at Stanford, and they're all around the United States. There were over, again, 30 events at Stanford last year. Let's get to creative destruction. I have said, by the way, that in the occupation period, Estonia was a destruction lab, and now you're very mature and you have a creative destruction lab. So this is a great example of a global conversations initiative. CDL was created by a Canadian academic, Ajay Agrawal, who's an economist at the University of Toronto. And he thought that AI would be a more powerfully disruptive economic innovation than the internet itself. And that was 10 years ago. And he made another observation, which is that Silicon Valley wouldn't have necessarily a monopoly on how these ideas could be applied using AI, but they might have a quasi-monopoly on how those ideas get turned into massive public companies and not into little publications. So what he did was to decide to build a mentor network that would be like Silicon Valley. So entrepreneurs, investors, lawyers, corporate executives. Today that network is 800 people, and CDL has partnered with 12 major universities around the world. It's a highly structured accelerator program. People really value it. CDL has created over $30 billion of equity value for companies in the last 10 years. So when Ajay asked me if I would be involved with CDL, I said I would, but only on one condition. He had to agree to sponsor a CDL Estonia, and he laughed. Well, we have got the last laugh because CDL Estonia actually got set up in record time. It's a partnership, as you can see, between CDL Global, Tartu University's Delta School of Management. There's lead sponsorship from Vabamu, from 2 very prominent Estonian entrepreneurs, Taavet and Sten, who you probably all know, and the Estonian Ministry of Economic Affairs. The stream theme here is digital society, and that is because that's the great strength of Estonia. And there's a special focus last year on healthcare and fintech. In 2022-23, we brought over 100 international guests to Estonia to participate in CDL, and these are very high-profile people. 22 companies from 13 countries participated, and today, those companies have raised over $70 million in equity capital. So that's a great achievement for CDL Estonia. So this year, we introduced a freedom and security focus. And the idea is to emphasize strategic deterrence and the need to create new tools, new defense technologies that small, conflict-forward countries can afford to buy at scale. And so the goal here, of course, is to try and prevent kinetic war. 25 international guest mentors here this week for the defense and security stream. Very senior group. One of those people is the former UK Minister of Defense. There's 3 national security fellows from the United States. So it's a really great program. Another significant initiative that's part of our Global Conversations program in the United States is called Digital Society and the Future of Freedom. And these are seminars that are a partnership again between WABAMU, Stanford, and something called the Abundance Institute. Abundance is part of one of the largest and most powerful philanthropic networks in the United States. So 10 years ago, we began to say that digital technology was going to transform the future of freedom socially, politically, economically, and militarily. Now, that is pretty much well known today. But Estonia's leadership in deploying digital technology to promote freedom is much less well known. And so the goal of these seminars is to help local, state, federal government agencies in the United States understand the opportunities created by digital technology and AI to serve citizens much more effectively. And in doing that, we're using Estonia as a powerful example of a country that has done a really excellent job of enhancing freedom, empowering citizens, and delivering economic growth through innovative policy and sound use of technology. In April at Stanford, Kaja Kallas, who was then obviously the Prime Minister of Estonia, keynoted our first event. And then in September, we had another event in Washington, D.C. for leaders of the federal government. And as part of expanding awareness now of those activities, we have a social media campaign that uses materials from these events. And I'm just going to cue up quickly one video. Can we play the video?
Imagine doing your taxes online in the same amount of time it takes to order takeout, and then getting your refund check delivered as quickly as an Amazon Prime order. In Estonia, that's reality.
If you filed your taxes online with your digital identity card, then you get your tax funds earlier.
Which is like 24 hours.
Yeah, it was pretty fast. So now we are in a point where 98% of people file taxes online. And I think we are also the only country in the world where actually people compete how fast they did taxes. I think it's right under a minute even.
Learn more about how the United States can build a digital society.
Great. Okay, so one last initiative that we'll talk about here. It's called the Estonian Multiomics Company. And this is very recent, but look, Estonia has one of the world's best biobanks. And 3 years ago, I was asked to see if there were ways to enable the biobank to build on the research value it was creating and maybe release a lot more clinical and economic value for the people of Estonia. That began a journey in partnership with all kinds of people around the world to form a sister company to the Institute of Genomics that is tasked with building a globally competitive commercial biotech platform. I wouldn't just say globally competitive, I would say globally leading. And so again, this is a partnership. It's between the University of Tartu, the Institute of Genomics, and there will be a lead investor that we will announce very soon, but that's a private sector group, and that's super exciting. We had our first board meeting last week. The goal here is to create for Estonia a leadership position in life science innovation that combines its extreme expertise in technology and in biobanking. And we've got several leaders here for CDL who are people from that world, and so we're really moving very, very nicely. So, back to the core topic, freedom. This is Olga in 2003. This is the opening ceremony for WABAMU, and she's cutting the barbed wire. Lennart Meri, who was then the president, or the former president, spoke at this event, and what he declared was that WABAMU is freedom's house. What we want everyone to know is that we think freedom is our most precious gift. Freedom is not free. Sustaining freedom requires investment and vigilance. And freedom is not abundant. Most people in most of the world do not enjoy the gift of freedom. Olga wanted Estonian people to be free and to have freedom. And her legacy is her foundation that invests in partnerships promoting freedom. Thank you.